Hello and welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. Today is Wednesday, April 8th, 2020, and I'm meteorologist Carrie Hazley, Chief of the National Weather Service Alaska's Emergency Services and Multimedia Branch. Later in today's show, I'll be joined by meteorologist Amanda Bowen. She'll be bringing you the aviation and the marine segments when we get to those. Let's take a look quickly at all of the ways that you can get a hold of us if you're looking for weather information. The first is to call the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391. Give that number a call. It'll take you to a menu system, and then you can go through the menus to get the weather forecast on your phone for the area that you're concerned about. You can also find us on the web 24 hours a day. It's weather.gov/Alaska. That web page takes you to a map where you can click anywhere on the map and get a zoomed in local forecast for the area that you are concerned about. You can also replace the word Alaska with the word Anchorage, the word Juneau, or the word Fairbanks. That'll zoom the map in a bit, and then you can actually pick the area you're trying to get the forecast for a little bit easier. And as always, you can email me, carrie.hazley@noaa.gov. Now let's take a look at the different products that are out right now. We have a winter storm watch that covers a good portion of western Alaska. It includes Nome, and it also includes Buckland, Deering, Unalakleet, Shaktoolik, and Galena. This is actually going into effect tomorrow and then covers winter weather that we're expecting from tomorrow afternoon into Friday afternoon. We're looking for anywhere from 6 to 10 inches of snow in most of the places that you see highlighted here in orange. Some areas could see actually locally heavier snow with amounts closer to 12 inches. And then especially in coastal areas, we're also looking for some gusty wind, maybe some blowing snow, with winds gusting between 30 and about 35 miles per hour. Currently no other advisories or warnings in effect over land at this time. So as far as the satellite picture goes, we see a weather system down over the southern part of the state, primarily impacting the Panhandle, slowly exiting Alaskan airspace and moving over into Canada as this moves from west to east today. We saw quite a bit in the way of snow with this, also some very gusty winds. I've got some snowfall totals that came in, and it looks like we got a good bit of snow in places like Yakutat and then also Haines and Skagway. In fact, Skagway, parts of the town saw over 12 inches of snow today, and then other places around the Panhandle, some places like Juneau, they saw between 0 and 2 inches, and most of the city with some gusty winds. But downtown Juneau and then over on Douglas Island, they actually saw closer to 4 inches. Yakutat around 7 inches of snow as this particular system moved through. We also got a bit of snow showers in the eastern part of the interior with this, less in terms of amounts, but still a few scattered showers out there. And then the satellite also shows some cloud cover out over the far western part of the Aleutians, had some rain sweep through in that particular area with another weather system, and some light clouds pushing their way into the western part of the state, primarily impacting the northwestern part of the state, moving into AKwx. So at the surface, we do have multiple areas of low pressure. The biggest weather maker is that one down over the Panhandle, where we did see significant snow in places like Haines, Skagway, and then also some snow and gusty winds in Juneau. And we're looking for that system to continue to move off to the east in Canada. Another weaker system behind it will move through just for another shot of precipitation in some places today. The further south in the Panhandle you get, the more the precipitation became kind of a slushy mix, and actually saw some rain in some places there. That is, again, going to continue to move out as we go through the overnight hours. We had another area of low pressure out over the Bering Sea that spread some precipitation out along the coast, but most of that actually out over open water, and high pressure is dominating the weather over much of mainland Alaska today, which made for a really nice day in a lot of places. Overnight tonight, we'll see high pressure continue to dominate over mainland Alaska. Just a few places where we could see some scattered snow showers, a few around Fairbanks, also a few around Kotzebue and Nome. We'll see that system that moved over the Panhandle finally work its way for the most part out of the area. Another weak system briefly pushes through. They could get a shot of a mix of rain and snow, or snow in some places. Nothing meeting warning criteria anymore, but still a bit of winter weather lingering here into the early part of April. And then we also have a system out in the far western part of the Aleutians, actually just to the south of Shimei there. That system also working its way to the east, spreading some snow and rain with it as it does so. And with that, we see some gusty winds, mostly through the terrain gaps along the chain. And then out over open water, we're looking for some heavy freezing spray with this, as we've got open water and gusty winds. Into tomorrow, we'll see that system out over the Aleutians continue to work its way to the east, spreading rain and again some gusty winds with it. And then a trough of low pressure associated with that will extend all the way into the west coast as we get into the day on Thursday. That's the system that's triggering this winter storm watch, where again we're going to see significant snowfall in some places. We're looking for those amounts to be again between 6 and 10 10 inches, with some local areas where we could see as high as 12 inches of snow. Gusty winds there. Further south from the Seward Peninsula there, we're also looking for some snow in places like Bethel. They'll have less in terms of amounts, but still going to see snow there. Also some snow maybe as far over as Dillingham. And then we'll continue to see this system work its way as we go eastward through the day. Over the Panhandle, a few lingering showers persist into the day on Thursday. Mostly a mix of rain and snow. We're not looking for any areas of significant snow accumulation. I'm sure that's a much needed break for those folks there. High pressure dominates most of mainland Alaska in between those two systems. Friday looks like a bit of an active day. High pressure still dominating the weather over the southern part of the state, also weak high pressure over the northern part. But we do have some snow sandwiched in between those two things. That associated with that area of low pressure that's pushing its way into the west coast through the day on Thursday. We'll continue to see that snow linger on Friday, though the system does continue to weaken. We'll also look for some snow and some mixed precipitation on Friday down along the Aleutian chain, some gusty winds through the terrain gaps there, and that high pressure will shift over into the Panhandle where they should have a really nice day by the time we get into Friday. As far as temperatures go across the state, Thursday morning will be another cool one where we're going to look for temperatures in the negative digits over much of the Arctic coast tomorrow. When we start our day out, Dead Horse, you're going to start the day off at about -10, -5 over Nukiagvik, and then as we get along the western coast there, we'll see temperatures at least come up above 0. 4 degrees for Nome. Bethel, you're going to start your day tomorrow at about 12 degrees. Coming around into southwest Alaska, 20 in Dillingham, 20 in King Salmon. South central Alaska, we're going to look for Palmer to start their day tomorrow at 20. Fairbanks, we're looking for you to start anywhere between -5 and 10, depending on kind of where you are around the city. Further out towards the Alcan border there, Tok, you're going to start your day tomorrow at 7 degrees. Over the Panhandle, temperatures come up just above freezing, and so will stay that way overnight. Temperatures hovering overnight just around 33, 34 degrees, depending on where you're at. We see a few temperatures that might get a little bit closer to 40. And then as we go into the day on Thursday, we will see some continued recovery. The Panhandle comes up into the low 40s for most sites. Yakutat, you'll be at 38 for a high on Thursday. Over into southwest Alaska, 30 for a high tomorrow in Dillingham and 33 in King Salmon. Down along the Aleutian chain there, we're looking also for some highs to be in the in the upper 30s. So Cold Bay, we're looking for you to top out at about 38 tomorrow, and then once we get out towards Adak, temperatures around 41. Arctic coast still single digits. Everything from the Brooks Range north really does stay pretty cool for the day on Thursday. And then Nome, you're going to be at about 13 degrees for a high on Thursday afternoon. Friday morning, we continue to see those cold temperatures in a lot of places up along the Arctic coast. -11 will be the place where you guys start. Again, there in Dead Horse. Arctic Village, -11 for a low temperature. When you start your day on Friday, coming further south, 10 for a low temperature on Friday there. And then as we go further to the east, after we've had that system work its way into the coast that is going to spread some snow, we'll actually see a bit of an improvement in terms of temperatures where it should warm up a bit. So by Friday, Bethel, you're actually going to warm up to the mid-20s, which is quite an improvement for where you've been in the teens to single digits. 24 for a low on Friday morning. 20 there in Nome, 6 up in Kotzebue, and then over in south central Alaska with clear skies and high pressure, it's actually going to be a pretty cool start to our Friday morning. 13 degrees for Anchorage, 20 down in Homer, and 15 up in Palmer. Out over the Copper River Valley there, we'll look for temperatures to be just below 0, -2 for Glen Allen Friday morning, and then temperatures right around freezing just below it for Friday morning in the Panhandle. And finally, let's take a look at what our highs are going to be for Friday afternoon. Single digits up along the Arctic coast, temperatures ranging from 13 all the way in the west to 9 over around Barter Island. Barrow there, Nukiagvik, you're going to top out at 4 degrees for a high on Friday. Seems like you guys just can't get out of those single digits. Temperatures around the Brooks Range, you'll be in the teens, and then coming into the interior, we see temperatures ranging from just above freezing in southwest Alaska, 35 in Bethel, to 25 around Fairbanks. Temperatures will be in the 40s for the highs on Friday afternoon over the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen with your look at aviation weather. For Thursday morning, we'll see some IFR conditions stretching from the western Aleutians through the Bering Sea and to the YK Delta coast, as well as in the higher terrain of the Panhandle. Marginal conditions for Thursday morning stretching from the northern Norton Sound all the way up the northwest coast of the mainland and through the Brooks Range. For Thursday afternoon, that IFR moves a little bit further north, so from the central Bering Sea to the Yukon Delta coast, as well as the eastern portion of St. Lawrence Island. Some improvement over the interior, but still marginal conditions for the central and western Brooks Range, the northwest coast, and into the higher terrain of the Panhandle. For Friday morning, that IFR spreading a little bit further inland, so stretching all the way from the Bering Sea east to the western Brooks Range across Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island. VFR, though, for the Alaska Peninsula, the entire northern Gulf Coast, as well as the Panhandle. For Friday afternoon, some improvement from IFR to MVFR and even to VFR for the YK Delta area. Still marginal conditions over much of the Yukon Flats and into the Brooks Range, though, as well as marginal conditions for the Aleutian Islands. Taking a look at past conditions, we'll see a lot of VFR, so Anaktuvuk VFR for Thursday. Adigan starting out marginal and improving to VFR in the afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill passes VFR on Thursday. Rainy Pass, Windy Pass, as well as Isabel Pass, all VFR on Thursday. Mentasta Pass, VFR on Thursday. Tanita Pass, VFR, and Portage Pass, VFR on Thursday. Marginal conditions at both Chilkoot and White Passes for Thursday. Taking a look at freezing levels, we'll see that surface freezing levels stretching from the Bering Sea southeast into the Alaska Peninsula, up into the North Gulf Coast near Yakutat, and through the higher terrain of the Panhandle on Thursday morning. Warmer air coming in from the southeast, not quite reaching the southern portions of the Panhandle, as well as a little bit of warmer air trying to stretch up into the Aleutians, but staying south of the Aleutians. Icing for Thursday, looking at below 8,000 feet over the YK Delta area, stretching north to Norton Sound and west to St. Lawrence Island. That's going to be considerable moderate below 8,000 feet. Below 8,000 feet, isolated moderate for much of the Bering Sea, and another area of considerable moderate below 10,000 feet, stretching from the western Aleutians north into the Bering Sea, and then back south into the central Aleutians. Looking at the jet stream for Thursday, the strongest jet we have is going to be over the coastal British Columbia, just south of the Panhandle area, with about 110 knots out of the southwest, about 80 knots out of the west coming into the Panhandle itself, about 75 knots out of the west and southwest into the Yukon Delta coast, and 70 knots out of the south for the central Aleutians. For 9,000 foot winds, we'll still see that maximum over coastal British Columbia just south of the Panhandle, about 55 knots out of the southwest, about 30 knots out of the west and northwest coming into the southern Panhandle itself, and then about 35 knots out of the west and northwest for the Chukchi Sea coast, and about 50 knots out of the south for the central Aleutians. At 3,000 feet, not so much wind far east in the Panhandle at this level, but we do see 45 knot winds out of the south for the central Aleutians, about 30 knots out of the south for the Bering Sea, and 35 knots out of the south coming up into St. Lawrence Island, about 25 knots out of the southwest on the Chukchi Sea coast at 3,000 feet on Thursday. Taking a look at turbulence, we have just a couple of areas of turbulence to talk about today. So an area of isolated moderate along the Yukon River and the Yukon Delta coast below about 4,000 feet. And then we'll see another area, actually this area of considerable moderate, along the Aleutian chain, stretching from the central Aleutians to the eastern Aleutians, almost to the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula. That's going to be below about 4,000 feet. Outside of that considerable moderate area over the Aleutians, we'll also see some isolated moderate turbulence, and that will stretch into the southern portion of the Alaska Peninsula, all the way from there down through the Aleutians and west to the western Aleutians. Stay tuned for more Alaska weather after this coming up educational segment.
Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us. Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us.
What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, first, let's talk about what it's not. It's not a floating island of trash like a garbage dump or a landfill. It's also not the only patch. They exist all throughout the ocean, and the Pacific Garbage Patch just happens to be the most famous. Garbage patches are large areas of marine debris concentration that are formed by rotating ocean currents called gyres, kind of like big whirlpools that suck things in. A garbage patch is made up of tiny plastic pieces called microplastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. It's more like pepper flakes swirling in a soup than something you can skim off the surface. You might come across some larger items like plastic bottles, but it's possible to sail through a garbage patch and not see anything. And they're a big problem for the ocean and us. People often ask why we can't just scoop up all the marine debris in the ocean. And the answer is, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. The first challenge is the sheer size of these garbage patches. They're huge. They're constantly moving with ocean currents. And there's debris from the ocean surface all the way down to the sea floor. Not to mention all the marine life we would disrupt if we tried to just scoop up debris. So what can we do? Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority. We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep trash out of the ocean in the first place. And we can participate in things like shoreline cleanups. It's a lot easier to deal with debris before it gets to the ocean. Because until we stop marine debris at the source, we'll just be cleaning it up forever.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Now for the marine forecast. Starting out with the ice edge, we see a little bit more ice than we've been seeing the last couple of days due to some northerly winds in the Bering Sea. It's going to be short-lived though, as we're going to see increasing southerly winds today and into tomorrow. That's going to both push that ice edge further north as well as start to deteriorate the ice right along the edge. We're also seeing a lot less ice in Cook Inlet as we're seeing warmer temperatures and plenty of sun start to deteriorate that ice. Expect that trend to continue into the weekend. Taking a look at southeast marine conditions for tomorrow, winds 15 to 20 knots out of the west and northwest for the Gulf, with seas in the 9 to 12 foot range. For the inside waterways, winds 10 to 15 knots, seas around 3 feet. Trending into tomorrow, we'll see a little bit lower winds and seas for the Gulf, 10 to 20 knots, and seas down to 6 to 8 feet for the Gulf. Winds actually increasing a little bit over the inside waterways, 15 to 25 knots out of the north, and seas 3 to 4 feet. For South Central, winds on the Gulf side going to be about 20 to 30 knots out of the northwest for Thursday, about 20 knots out of the northwest for Prince William Sound, and 10 to 15 knots out of the north and northeast for Cook Inlet. Seas in the 8 to 9 foot range for the Gulf, about 3 feet in Prince William Sound and 2 to 4 feet in Cook Inlet. Looking forward into Friday, those winds and seas come down just a little bit, 10 to 25 knots out of the east for the Gulf area, and seas down to 5 to 7 feet. And winds decreasing a little bit in Cook Inlet to about 15 knots out of the north and northeast. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas on Thursday, winds just 10 to 20 knots out of the west on the north side of the peninsula around Kodiak Island, and about 10 to 15 knots out of the southeast on the Bristol Bay side. We'll see seas rather low for this time of year across the board, just 4 to 7 feet on the south side of the peninsula and 2 to 5 feet away from that ice edge on the north side of the peninsula. Into Friday, we see winds and seas coming up just a little bit. So winds coming up to about 25 to 30 knots out of the east for Friday. Seas increasing on the north side outside of the ice edge 4 to 6 feet, and increasing much more significantly on the south side to around 13 to 14 feet. For the Aleutian chain, a good amount of wind, some strong winds for Thursday, 20 to 35 knots out of the south for the central Aleutians. So some strong gales for the central Aleutians. Also, that's where we're going to see our highest waves, with 11 to 14 foot seas also in the central Aleutians. All of that comes down just a little bit for Friday in the Aleutians, with winds decreasing to 15 to 25 knots and seas down to 9 to 11 feet on the south side of the Aleutians and just 7 to 8 feet on the north side of the Aleutians. For Thursday along the west coast, winds 15 to 25 knots, generally out of the south, especially near the Pribilofs and in the open Bering Sea. We'll also see seas around 7 to 9 feet away from the sea ice edge and closer to 3 feet closer to the ice edge on Thursday. For Friday, winds and seas both coming up a little bit, so 20 to 25 knots of wind out of the southeast and east, increasing to about 30 knots near St. Matthew Island. Seas also coming up to 11 to 12 feet in the open Bering Sea. For the Arctic coast, winds out of the southwest 15 to 20 knots almost across the board. So 15 to 20 knots across the north slope and a little bit lower in some places along the northwest coast, 10 to 20 knots. For Friday, we'll see those winds come down just a little bit out of the west in general, 10 to 15 knots, 25 knots on the south side of the Bering Strait. Recapping our weather for tonight, expect freezing spray in the Bering Sea tonight as those southerly winds pick up. So be careful if you or anyone you know is headed out there. We've got low pressure system starting to move into the Aleutians that's going to be bringing those winds as well as some rain and snow to the Aleutian Islands themselves. High pressure in command over the central interior, so not much in the way of precipitation to speak of there. Thanks so much for watching Alaska TV Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.